everybody, and thank you for joining me on a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. I'm your host, Nicole Pinkston, aka Mrs. Pinky, and I have a special guest with you. I have Tyrone McDaniel, aka the Urban CEO. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Before we get started into our chat, I just want to let you guys know that we are having our shows on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Please make sure you click consciousconservativemedia.net so you can be always informed and you can actually join my channel inside of there. If you are so blessed to be a part of this podcast and you like what you see here, make sure that if you want to give a donation, it's at the top. Is it Cash App Miss Pinky 85 or donate to my PayPal at paypal.me Miss Pinky 85, and all of my social media is at the bottom if you want to contact me for any and everything. So how you doing, sir? Can you tell our audience and I guess a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. And my name is Tyrone McDaniel. I live here in Houston, Texas. And I'm an affordable housing real estate developer, pretty much.
Awesome. What got you into real estate? What got you into specifically affordable housing? What made you go in that direction for your career and for your job cycle?
You know, a long story made short. Quite honestly, so I'm in my neighborhood now where I grew up, which is Fifth Ward, which is east of downtown Houston. And as a kid, it's funny when I look back. It was like I said, "Hey, I'm gonna come back here and do some, in essence, build and build and renovate houses." I didn't articulate it or think it at that time, but when I look back now, several years after the fact, in essence, as a kid, when I grew up in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods that are here in Houston and other cities where we have a vision, I wanted to make the area where I grew up better, and here we are.
Awesome. So, can you tell us a little bit? How did you get started in the real estate industry? Did you just have an idea? Did you flip like one house? How did you get started into actual real estate? How did that happen?
Sure. Thank you. So for me, initially, I had a great friend of mine, a mentor who was like a peer as well, but he was already in the real estate space. He worked for a bank, what they call a wholesale bank, and he would call on mortgage brokers and go around to mortgage brokers and solicit the loans that the company he worked for represented. And so his vision was, hey, I want to start a mortgage company. At the time, I didn't know what a mortgage company was, but once he explained, hey, that when a person wants to buy a house, or if they already got a house, they want to refinance, either they're going to call a bank or a mortgage broker who's an individual person that represents many different types of banks and institutions. So once I was educated a little bit on this space via a friend, I said, well, okay, that represents an opportunity for us, specifically for me, because I figured out if I could understand the financing component associated with real estate, I could buy, build, or sell anything I wanted. So for me, my initial interest was I became a loan officer and was a person who did loans for people looking to buy a house or refinance a house. Simultaneously, I met my wife, who was an engineer by education, but she was also a licensed realtor, and she was selling houses to her engineer co-workers. They're making great money and they want to buy a house. And so simultaneously, a couple of serendipitous things happened. I always had an interest coupled with I met someone, and then I met someone who's really important, which is my wife. We've been married 21 years now. And so a culmination of all of those things happening at the same time was my initial entry into real estate.
Yeah, so when you first decided to build the block, or let's say go back and rebuild, were there any obstacles in your way or any kind of challenges that you faced when you first started
Sure.
to go this route?
I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm 47 and so, what I generally tell people is I was buying the block before it was cool, before it was the cool
Mhm.
hashtag, rappers made a song about it, things of that nature. And really what happened for me is, 8 to 9 years ago, I really was at a point in my life where I felt like I wanted to do something that was going to be more impactful and long lasting. And having been at that point, I had been in real estate now roughly 11 or 12 years. And I said, you know what? I want to spend the rest of my years doing something that really means something to me. So that was where the inspiration came from, because early on, I already had a vision for what I could do in my neighborhood. And just so happened my neighborhood's a neighborhood that's literally the last, when you look at Houston as a major metropolitan city, of downtown Houston, and it was the last area that surrounded downtown Houston that had been gentrified, if you will. So I knew that the area was going to grow, and so I said, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna make a mark here." So we started that, roughly 7 or 8 years ago, and it just really had a lot to do with community pride. The mission of our company is to reshape the face of inner city Houston, one home at a time. And so there's neighborhoods like my neighborhood, Fifth Ward, Third Ward, Sunnyside, and basically the core of the urban neighborhoods that I said I have a vision that, I believe that I can execute. And that's what we've been working on for the last several years.
Awesome. How do you view the trend in real estate right now? Do you think a lot of people are just jumping in it as a way to get economics? Is it a good way to secure generational wealth? What do you see with this trend now of everybody saying they want to flip houses or get into real estate?
Well, one, I believe everyone should have real estate somewhere in their portfolio, number one. Number two, having ownership in our neighborhoods, we lack in that. When you look at how culturally we compare to other communities, we lack in net worth and things of that nature. Part of that is because we don't own neighborhoods that we culturally have an affinity for. So owning property in our neighborhoods is key and critical. And truly, it's where wealth starts. Wealth starts with ownership and the ownership of assets. And so it's not wise as a culture for us to live in areas that are appreciating in value and not own. So I believe we should own in some of these areas, number one. Number two, I believe that gives us something to have pride in outside of just generally we have pride minus ownership. We want to have pride with ownership. And once we have ownership, now we can start to control what happens in some of our communities. There's no shortage of stories all over the country where we used to own or have a certain ownership interest or market share in areas, and over time we've lost that or whatever the case may be. So for me, that's what our whole mission is about: not only reshaping the face of inner city Houston, but inner city America by, number one, helping us have a greater level of pride in our communities, looking at it from an ownership perspective, and now we can guide and start to create opportunities for others in our community and things of that nature.
Have you had any negative impact from recent legislation with the real estate moratorium? Have you had any impact from the recession? Have you had any kind of advice for people that are going through that right now and they're just starting out as homeowners like me who are in this situation? Do you have any advice in that?
So, well, there's several things. The way I entered real estate was on the financing side. And so one of the things I used to tell people is most times we tend to buy. So if a lender says you can purchase up to, let's just say 300,000, most people max out their buying capability. One of the things as a lender I used to tell people is never max out your buying capability. If you can buy 300, I know you want your most amazing house, but what most of us fail to realize is our first house is not our forever home. And if you get really strategic financial wise, you probably don't want to stay in the house beyond 5 years, primarily because after 2 years you can sell it and earn as a single person up to 250,000, as a couple up to $500,000 tax free. So your first house is really just getting you in the game and moving you from a person who pays rent to actually being able to build some equity. That being said, so the first point is never max out what you're capable of buying. Number one, you're already in a house now. Number two is most markets have appreciated in value around the country. If you're in a major metropolitan city, and even in some of the rural areas, home values have gone up. So if you find yourself in a situation you generally have some equity, and there's no shortage of banks, credit unions, and lending institutions that will allow you to leverage some of that equity, number one, and either lower your interest rate or take advantage of the equity you have in a property. That's point number two. Point number three, I would say to people is it's amazing how much money you can earn on a part-time basis by renting a room in your house, or if you have a garage, apartment, things of that nature, on websites like VRBO, Airbnb, and things of that nature. So if I were a homeowner and I were experiencing some financial issues, I would dedicate a space or a room or a garage to utilizing Airbnb and other temporary or short-term rental concepts, because just quite frankly, it's an untapped opportunity for people that may be finding themselves in a situation where I got a house, I maybe can't afford it, or things have gotten tight. Maybe I'm not working as much as I was during the pre-pandemic. Maybe you haven't benefited from the work from home opportunities, whatever the case may be. So there's some other things that you can do that can turn your home into something that produces income for you, versus it just being something that drains your financial income on a monthly basis.
Awesome. So have you seen some changes in you and you actually starting to see in the block by you buying up some of the houses, and have you seen some changes in your location so far with some of the things you've been working on?
Most certainly. So, the first thing that happens on a granular level is you have people around you start to take more ownership. So when we go in, generally the houses we buy houses that people are selling, and they're associating no value with the house, and they're saying you're just buying it for land value. So we buy the worst of the worst properties in the neighborhoods. First thing that happens is the people around you take a little bit more pride in their house, because they're like, these guys just bought the worst house on the block, in this area, and they're making it better. So that's the first thing that happens is people around you start to kind of they cut their yard a little bit more. The house I'm in front of right now, as I do this podcast, the lady across the street, she had some repairs done to her house on the exterior once we started renovating the house across from us. So that's the first thing we see is pride of ownership in the community. The second thing that happens is people start asking questions, and a lot of times you can be in these neighborhoods and not realize what's happening all around you that's going to change that entire neighborhood. So there's an educational component where we help people understand, because to me there's a big issue in our communities in terms of gentrification. But to me, the issue in our neighborhoods isn't gentrification. It's affordable housing. There's not enough issues. Gentrification is basically making the neighborhood better. There are people that look at when we buy a house and they think, oh, you're gentrifying, which, yes, we are making the neighborhood better if you understand that concept. But the bigger issue that's facing our communities is there's not enough affordable housing. And this isn't just our communities, this is a nationwide problem through all communities. And so, depending on whose statistics you read, there's somewhere between a 7 to 9 million home shortfall in across the country. So our thing is, one, making the neighborhood better. Two, educating the homeowners as well as the people that are around us. And then three, helping people get a bigger picture for what really ails our community, so that we can collectively make decisions that are going to progress them and participate in that progression that's going to happen.
What you said you were a loan officer. What barriers to getting loans and what obstacles did you see people have with trying to secure mortgages? Did you see um, credit issues? Like, what were some of the issues did you see?
The biggest issue I saw was, generally speaking, a lot of us just weren't educated on credit, how the credit system works, and how that relates to acquiring assets, and how our credit is a key piece to creating long-term wealth. It was just, growing up how I grew up, I was never taught that. And when I got into the space and I started understanding what credit scores and how loans work and leverage and things of that nature, I was like, wow, okay, now it makes sense how people can amass huge sums of wealth once they understand credit, finances, and things of this nature. So, definitely there's a huge need for more education as it relates to credit scores, FICO scores specifically, how those things impact your ability to borrow and leverage and utilize OPM, other people's money as it relates,
Yes.
whether that's a bank, credit
Mhm.
institutions, things of this nature. Like these are all deficits that, for a multiplicity of reasons, we have in our communities. And so that was something I saw as a loan officer, is that, man, our people are starving for this knowledge. They don't understand. They don't know. No one, we didn't have these conversations at our kitchen table, unlike other people did.
Wow. So that is what fueled your passion for affordable housing. Which ways have you saw to make housing affordable? What have you done? Were it just government options or were it more private?
Sure. So most of our up to this point, we've all sought private solutions. Um, to be candid with you, if I can be candid, like my patience isn't really short. So what I figured out, what for how I wanted to operate, this is how we approached it. We said, listen, we're going to go out and either take our own funds or find other like-minded people, and we partner and do projects in areas where we have an affinity for. Um, we have some things on the slate next year and beyond that will incorporate tax credits and stuff like that from governmental sources. But to me, my premise was it's always easy to build a consensus once you have a proven concept. So we've invested our first several years in building a concept that's one profitable that we can show that works. So now if we go to the government now we have municipalities reaching out to us saying, hey, listen, could you come in and duplicate some of what you've been doing in Houston in our city? So for me, it was about how can we be self-sufficient and be resourceful with what we have around us, and do that in such a manner where it begins to attract the attention of people that are in governmental spaces and other things, so that now when they ask us to come in, it's a lot easier than if I go and initiate that conversation. So, you know, it hasn't been easy. That's not the easiest way to do it. That's just the way for me that I felt most comfortable with, and that I felt that long term, it would make it easier. Like to me, I wanted to create an environment where I don't want to be told no. I want to be told yes. So if I create an environment where you call me, now I get the opportunity to say yes or no, versus you telling me saying, hey, I want to build some houses over here. Can I do it? You say no. Well, if I go over there and buy some land based on understanding what covenants you already have and ask you, can I build it? I'm going to get a yes because I've already figured out what the parameters are for how you want to do it. Now, if you want to help me do that, that's great. If there's some assistance you can offer, that's great, but I'm prepared to do it without you. And so that's been effective for us. But because of some of the opportunities that have been presented to us, now we will, over the next year and going into the future, do some more collaborative things with municipalities and the government, if you will. But up to now, it's pretty much been me, my wife, and different partners that we may have had to help us create what we've been able to do.
What do you, being in this industry, what do you see people get wrong when they speak about the inner city and trying to fix a lot of the issues that these cities have? What do you see wrong when you're on social media trying to, encourage people to fix the city? What do you see people get wrong when they talk about the situation?
The first issue, if I'm candid with you, is
Hmm.
everybody has an opinion. One of my favorite new sayings is own something more than an opinion. Like I'm in Fifth Ward, my neighborhood, and I can't tell you how many of my, like, growing up in the inner city, and I get it. If you grew up in the hood, your thing growing up generally was, we got to get out. We're gonna do everything we can to get out of here. I agree. That's the same thing me and all my buddies did. But my whole thing was understanding that, yeah, we're gonna get out, but if you just from a business perspective, now let's not even talk cultural and none of this other stuff. Just from a business perspective, if you look at most hoods in inner city America, they're surrounding downtown. And if you look at just what's happening, not in your own city, but macro, big picture, what's happening all over the country, The areas around downtown cities are being gentrified. And because they're being gentrified, it means we should own them because we should have some ownership interests in these areas. These are our communities. So the biggest challenge has been getting more of us to recognize it's not too late. You know, because what we want to do now is, now that we recognize, okay, yeah, our neighborhoods are blowing up, we should own them now. You're now, what many people do is like, I can recall buying lots in Fifth Ward for $7,000.
Mm.
The last lot we put an offer in was for 110. So I could still subscribe to, oh man, the first lot I bought over here was 7. I should be paying 7,000 or 20,000, no more than 30. But that's a long gone era now. So if I want to be a landowner today, I have to pay at the new price. And so you have the first level of awareness, which is, hey, you should start investing or owning back in the area. Then once you get beyond that, the next issue is people want to pay the price for the land or the real estate that they want to pay the prices from when they were kids, but we're adults now. It's no secret that the hoods are a great place to own now. So what you got to do is you have to adjust your sensibilities to pay what the current prices are. Because here's the thing that I believe: in most major metropolitan cities, values aren't going to go down. 5 years from now, if you're from a major metropolitan city, 9 times out of 10, if you bought something today, even though you think prices are high, this, that, and the third, 5 years from now, they're going to be higher. 10 years from now, they're going to be higher. 15 years from now, you're going to feel like you're an idiot because you didn't buy way more real estate back, in times like now. So I say all that to say, those are the main issues I see is people, for one, it's the awareness. Then for two, they say, okay, great, let me take action. But now you don't want to buy because you can't pay the old price. And the reality of the matter is most of our communities won't be any cheaper 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So you're not too late. Yes, the market has gone up, but there's still opportunity for you.
What would you suggest would be the first step someone that's interested into getting into real estate? Do you think they should go the education route and go agent route? Should they go the business side route? What would you suggest the best or the most efficient possible way to get into this? I'm trying to
Thank you for
figure out
that
how to frame
question.
it.
Thank you for that question, and I'm gonna share with you why. What most of us do that are in real estate is we tell people that what we do is the best way to get started, and I think that's a travesty. What you got to figure out is, what are you trying to accomplish? I made
Mm-hmm.
great money as a loan officer, but I only became a loan officer and a mortgage broker so that I could learn finance and do the stuff that we do now.
Mm-hmm.
A large part of what makes me successful today, I learned 20 years ago when I entered the industry because I learned it on the finance side, but that was strategic. That was the decision I made based on understanding I don't know jack. And what I did know, which was literally an epiphany from God, was you don't know nothing. So if you know nothing else, not knowing nothing, you know that money controls, if not everything, almost everything. So go learn how the
Mm-hmm.
money works, and that'll make a lot of this other stuff easier to understand. That was the way that made sense for me. What I tell people is figure out, what are you trying to accomplish. If you got a great most I talk to so many people that got a good job, making great money, and they say, "Oh, well, I want to go be flip houses, or I'll go be a wholesaler." And I say, "Why you want to do this?" They say, "Oh, I want to create residual income and fire my boss." Well, why aren't you buying duplexes, fourplexes, multifamilies? Borrow against, take your 50 grand out of your IRA or whatever, and buy a 8 unit or 10 unit, and boom, you just retired. There's no reason for you to flip houses. Yeah, it's sexy, it's fun, but that is, you didn't say I want to get dirty every day, work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and be in and outside of houses, managing crews, and so on and so forth. So I tell people, figure out what exactly you want to do. Specifically, what do you want real estate to do for you? And for me, that meant I needed to go become a loan officer. I became a real estate agent. We started investing. I became a home builder, and developer, and then now we do all of those things. But my whole goal was to get to what I call the top of the food chain. which is being able to build or develop and design anything I want. So I took a very serendipitous, a kind of long journey into the space. Some people, you know, it may be better to go wholesaling. So I say all that to say, one, figure out what it is you want to accomplish. Number two, educate yourself. I'm a person that believes in buying books, tapes, courses, paying for people to consult me, because what a lot of people try and do is shortcut the shortcut. To me, the shortcut is, let me go to an expert in that space, pay them for their time and their expertise, and leverage all of that and figure out if I want to do that, do I want to take a piece of that, and so on and so forth. So um, my long drawn out dissertation to your question is, number one, educate yourself on the opportunities out there. Most people think real estate is very what I call slotted, is only one or two ways. No, real estate's dynamic. I know people that are inspectors. They get excited by real estate because they say, you know what, I'm being an inspector. And all they do is inspect houses, and they have a tremendous life. I know people, my plumber makes probably $400,000 a year. His business isn't sexy, it's not exciting, but this dude is ridiculously profitable. You know, my framer probably makes $300,000 a year. So to me, I'm big on, one, figuring out what you want to do. Two, figuring out the opportunities that are in the marketplace. And then based on those two things, you now figure out what's best for you. So unfortunately, I don't have a, hey, go do this kind of answer to give to you, because to me, it takes more. It's not a one little, I can't give you two sentences to help you figure out what your best option is for real estate, because I don't know who's going to listen to this. What I can tell you is figure out what you want to accomplish, understand that real estate can help you accomplish it, and then educate yourself so that you understand all the different ways it can help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And then from there, you make a decision on what's going to work best for you.
So, do you think people that are freaking out about the pandemic and then the housing moratorium and everything that's going on with the Biden administration are too fearful, or have y'all been able to make adjustments and then y'all been good from there? What do you think?
So our business hasn't been affected by any of this. Matter of fact, we're doing better than we've ever done business wise. There are people that haven't been as fortunate, and we recognize that. What I can tell you is, you know, there are a couple of variables. So the first thing is, the market's always changing, and you got to be adept on what's happening in the market, and you got to be able to make mid-course corrections. So you got to see what's happening in the marketplace and be able to adjust your business model to be successful. And so right now, we're not in a position where we hold a lot of rentals that have been affected by moratoriums from an eviction perspective. Most of our projects are more short-term kind of rentals, like Airbnb and things of that nature. So it's afforded us an ability to kind of shelve ourselves from that, outside of properties we have that are going to be encumbered by more like Section 8 and things of that nature, with Section 8 saw no interruptions or things of that nature. So kind of sort of how we structured our business, we've been very, very fortunate. The bigger picture is that, you know, there are no easy solutions. What I tell people is, real estate's a simple business. It's not easy. Most gurus and course they tell you, oh, it's real, real easy. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. It's a simple business. You're providing housing for people, whether it's long-term or short-term. It's not necessarily an easy business. It's a simple business. And so there are these different types of challenges that we have. I think we're in a different political environment that going forward, there are going to be some unique challenges that are going to be presented in the real estate space. What I will also say to people is this: real estate at its core is truly a problem-solving business. So when you understand it's a problem-solving business, then you embrace these challenges that the market is going to continually present to you. But what a lot of new people don't understand is they think that, oh, I just buy a house, I put a tenant in there, and everything just flows perfect. Or I just buy a house, I line up all the contractors, we fix it up, and we sell it and make a whole bunch of money. Or I just find a piece of dirt, I design it, the city approves it instantly, we build it, make it. No, none of those things work that simple. They are right with real estate is what I call organized confusion. And the only reason people make money, yeah, it's organized confusion or organized chaos. And the only reason people make money is because they are solving huge problems. And so this is truly a problem solving business. And once you lose sight of that, then it makes it difficult for you to have any undertaking in real estate. So that's so regardless of whether right now the issue is COVID, but once COVID is done, there'll be another issue. So you have to have a problem solving mentality to be successful in real estate.
What has been your biggest problem that you had to solve as of late? Have you had any issues with anything in particular?
Well, I think our biggest issue currently has been material prices. There's been an extreme amount of volatility. The simple answer. So when we frame a house, a brand new house or an old house, there's these boards we use called OSB. They're 4x8 sheets, and they're what we put on the house, on the frame of the house, before we put siding on or stucco or whatever is going to be the exterior facade. Well, in the last now roughly, prior to COVID, we could buy sheets of those for $7 to $8 a sheet, and 4x8 sheets. So it's 4x8 feet, 4 foot by 8 foot, 32 square feet. Now that same sheet of wood is about right now about $39 a sheet. So it's gone up dang near 600%, and lowered a little bit. So the biggest issue we've had as of late are material prices and just dealing with the inflation that's associated with not just material but also labor, the shortage of labor. Those are our two biggest issues right now.
And what do you see? How are you adjusting and making up for those? Are you taking out more loans? Are you doing apprenticeships? Like, what are you doing to fill in that gap? So we're giving out, advice to people who might be struggling right now.
Sure. Well, if I'm there's two ways we're handling that. Number one, it's inflation, so we're absorbing the cost and passing it on to the end buyer or renter. So that's why you see rental prices going up. That's why you see home prices going up, because it's taking more for us to generate uh, housing units to get to to the marketplace. So that's the first thing. The second point, which is an advantage that I will share with people, is that there are many developers that had halted projects because of the increase in material costs. Now, when you have an operation like what we have, we can't stop. Like, for us to stop building houses, like we can't stop buying houses and build. Like, that's just what we do. That's what our company does. So we have to adjust to the marketplace. If you're going to be in real estate long term, you're going to have to adjust to the marketplace. Let the truth be told, personally, I don't think prices will go lower material wise. I don't think they'll go much lower. It's kind of like what happened with gas several years ago. We were paying one price, all of a sudden prices shot up real high. Everybody was screaming, hollering. After a few months, they lowered down, but they never went back to where they were previously. That's what's just happened in materials. So what we've done is just adjusted our pricing accordingly. And because other builders and developers have halted projects, that's a strategic advantage, because that means that fewer people are going to have product on the marketplace, which now means if you did go through the headache of paying more for material, when you do get your house out there available for rent or for sale, it's going to move faster just because other builders have stopped building. So, again, understanding that real estate is a problem solving business. Once materials went higher, we started looking for different ways to solve that. One of the things that another portion or another division of our company is a cargo texture or a container home module. So we're utilizing containers now in place of wood, because we can get containers more readily. We can frame a house. The average house that it takes us right now, $30,000 in wood and $11,000 in labor. So for $41,000 in wood costs, we can do that same project with containers and probably do it for about 28, 29,000. So there's some benefits us using other technologies as well that we're utilizing to figure out ways to get more product in the marketplace in the height of these increasing prices.
As far as the job market sector, how are you seeing the trades go? Are they falling off? Are people taking up those jobs? Are they picking up? Are people quitting? How are the trades faring out far as you?
What we are, there's a huge shortage. Like literally, people are making god awful sums of money as licensed and unlicensed trades. In fact, one of the things we're doing is actively helping more people get into the trades. We've had many people become HVAC professionals. The electrical and plumbing is a longer education cycle based on how those industries are governed. We've had several people that we've helped get into the carpentry space, but the job market, the opportunity in the trades is immense. Even with plumbing and electrical, where there's a decent amount of education, years as apprenticeship. I mean, the people that are in these space right now, throughout all trades, throughout the building industry in general, it's a very older demographic of individuals that are there. So there's a huge need for fresh faces and new people. And the reality of the matter is, there's a huge sum of our youth and current adults that aren't going to go to college. They're not going to go to university, do 4 to 6 years of education. And so the trades is a huge opportunity to not only have a long lasting career, but a career that is well paying. I mean, most trades that work in the building and renovation industry earn higher than average incomes. So one of the things we're proactive about is getting more people into these spaces. And so right now, over the next, indefinite amount of years, there's a tremendous opportunity. So you could be a person say, well, financially, I'm not ready, or I don't know what my career path is. There are all types of opportunities, whether it's on the design side, the home builder side, the whether you want to be a trade specifically. Real estate's a dynamic industry. You could become an inspector that doesn't take an education. You can have a felony to do that. So there's so many different spaces. There's the appraisal space, there's surveyors, there's all these people that supply what we call the bricks and shovels that allow people like me to buy. So, buy houses and flip them or rent them or sell them or develop them and things of that nature. So there are very few places in our economy that offers the opportunity that real estate offers, without some of the um, challenges that you have in other spaces.
Awesome. What would be your advice to anyone starting out in the real estate industry? What kind of tips or tricks or anything like that would you offer people?
Sure. This is the most powerful piece of advice I can give anyone that would ever see this podcast or show, and that is
Mhm.
to buy one house every year or every other year. I believe everyone should own real estate in their portfolio somewhere. Literally in a 10-year time frame, really in a 5-year time frame, it doesn't matter where you are financially in terms of what you earn. If you start to if you make it a goal and you start dedicating a little bit of money and you bought a house somewhere, maybe not in your city, maybe you live in a high um, value city where housing is real expensive. Well, buy a house in Port Arthur, Texas, or St. Louis, Missouri, or Kansas, or Cleveland, or somewhere. But if you bought one house every year or every other year for the next 5 to 10 years, it would drastically change your life for most people. Like literally, in somewhere between 5 to 10 years, you become a millionaire, an asset millionaire, not a liquid millionaire, but an asset millionaire. And this is just off something you're doing. You're buying one a year, and you're just not going out to eat a couple times, a few times for a month. You're not buying a couple of outfits a couple times a month, and you're dedicating that money to save it so that you can create an asset pool, or what I call a portfolio, or a huge bucket of money that will pay you for the rest of your life. And so, what I would say to anyone, you don't have to be a builder, developer, home flipper, major podcaster, none of that stuff. If you bought one house every year, every other year for the next 5 to 10 years, it would drastically change the trajectory of your financial future.
That's awesome. A lot of what do you think people don't get about home ownership or real estate? Do you think they think it's too hard, or is it impossible, or is it education? What do you think people are missing when it comes to this industry?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. We see, so like, I never forget a mentor. He said to me, he said, just because you find a deal doesn't mean it's your deal. And what that taught me is you will see opportunities all around. You got to figure out what's your opportunity. And so what happens is we take ideas or concepts that aren't in my opinion, our best interest. Like there's a huge, a lot of people say, well, okay, I'm gonna just rent a house and I'm gonna invest in other houses. That's great if you are the kind of person that's gonna take the money that you would normally. So you go rent a place for 1,000 because you would have bought a place that costs 1,500. Now, if you're the kind of person that's going to take that extra five and save it so you can start investing, then great, do that. The reality of the matter is, there's only if 100 of us stand in line to sign up for that class, probably 15 to 20 are going to do it. So the reality of the matter is, most of us really need to buy a house because that's how most people in this country begin to create wealth. And from there, once you buy that house, which most people don't really understand the tax code, you can sell your house tax free as a couple and earn up to $500,000 tax free in the United States of America. So if you buy a house today in a gentrifying area for 200,000, fast forward 5 years from now, it's worth 400,000. Most people say, "Oh, your tax value went up," but wait, you got $200,000 in equity that you can get tax free. Why not sell, get that money tax free, and then go buy another house for $200,000 and do it all again? But now you pay for the house and it's free and clear. Maybe you buy a $300,000 house where you got $1,000 mortgage, so your mortgage payment goes down. You got a nicer house in a nicer area, and you're more financially stable because you got $200,000 in equity on a house that's worth $300,000, and you only owe $100,000 versus not staying in that position. So I think a lot of times, you know, we don't understand the opportunity, and we don't understand, some of these things that are available to us. So leveraging opportunities like that where we can move up. There's so many. I mean, there's so many different things we can do to kind of elevate ourselves and get ourselves further up the food chain.
Awesome. What do you got working on now? What are you guys doing now? You said you're in an affordable housing. What made you lean that way?
So because my going. So one of your previous questions had to do with like COVID and how does that impact our business and things of that nature. And I said that we're doing good, relatively speaking. Because one of the things I recognize is if there's a 7 to 9 million home deficit, and because it's affordable means I could build a house and sell it for 299,000. But if I want to make it affordable, I need to sell it for 269. So
Mhm.
I'm willingly saying I'm gonna, or if I want to rent it, I could rent it for 1,900, but I'm gonna choose to rent it for 17 or 1,600 so that it can be classified affordable. So what that means is I'm willing to accept less money generally for doing the same amount of work. So what I automatically knew is most people aren't going to want to do that. So now that creates a bigger opportunity for me because most people are going to want to sell for the most amount of money or rent for the most amount of money. So that was point one, is I knew that it would be an evergreen opportunity if I were to focus on affordable housing. Number two, that was how my mom was able to get a house when and we rented a house. We rented for years. When she finally bought a home after multiple issues and different things of that nature trying to make that happen, it was because of some affordable housing programs. And so I never forgot that experience, and that's a part of who I am today. And so it was a combination of understanding this is an evergreen opportunity. Um, Number two, another point that I didn't say, at a certain point, you move from chasing money to chasing significance and impact. So once I got to a point in my life where it didn't matter how much money I made now, and I wanted to focus on doing what was most important to me, that was when I had the epiphany to really focus on affordable housing because I always loved my community. I always had a great amount of pride associated with where I grew up from and other neighborhoods like it. And I just felt like I was called to create my lane in is real estate. That was how I was going to impact areas that meant something to me. Other people have different giftings, but for me, this was the space I was gifted in, and I felt like my creator gave me a vision for areas that were like the neighborhood I grew up in. And so in an indirect way, it was answered for me that affordable housing was a place that I would have a lot of impact in.
Awesome. So you were willing to sacrifice some profit, but in the long run, you have a more pool of clients because they see the housing is lower than maybe what the other prices are in the area. Um, how
Sure.
important how important was it to have the team that you have, not just your wife, but all the other, like your mentor and all these different people? How did that impact your success? You say of the team that you have around you.
No man or woman's an island. We all are the sum total of every experience, every person that sold into us, whether it was unconscious or conscious. A lot of people have helped us and it was unconscious. We didn't recognize that we were learning from them. A lot of people we learned consciously from. We said, hey, this person has some knowledge or some skill sets that I want to learn from, and we consciously said we're going to pay attention to. So that's why I don't take it lightly when I say this is for me, what I do is a part of my calling. There was a point in my life where me and my wife, we designed our whole life where we didn't have to do nothing. We had to be nowhere. We could wake up at 11 o'clock, and there was our vision to do nothing, and that was fun for a season. Right now, I wake up without an alarm clock, generally no later than 6:30, ready to go. And this is coming from a guy who used to sleep to the middle of the day because that's what I wanted to do. Stay up all night, sleep to the middle of the day, and I had to be nowhere. Now I had to be places, show up, talk to folk, design, do all this other stuff, and I love it. I love, I'm in front of when I get off this, I got to walk into a house and look at something to make sure it's ready for an inspection tomorrow. But I love it. So for me, it's just a blessing. That's why when you asked earlier, what's the best way real estate? I always tell people, one, educate yourself on the opportunities, but even more important than that, figure out who you are. Figure out what role does real estate play in your life. Real estate, for me, real estate's the biggest business opportunity in my life. But for you, it may not be that. It may just be some secondary to your other love. You may love whatever it is, podcasting, hair,
Mhm.
whatever. My wife loves sewing, you know what I mean? So real estate doesn't have to be all encompassing. That's one thing I want people to get. You don't have to be like, I'm a weirdo. I love this stuff. When I go on vacation, I look at houses and go look at bill. Like, it doesn't matter where I go, I'm gonna do real estate. But that doesn't mean to the person that doesn't feel that way, you should still have it somewhere in your portfolio, in my opinion. So needless to say, I don't know if that answered your question specifically because I digress a little bit. So
It did though. Thank you. Are you how do you feel about it as real estate as something to leave to your kids, a legacy? We already talked about generational wealth. Do you think real estate is the way for us to bridge that gap with generational wealth and just passing stuff on to our children and our grandchildren?
it has to be. It has to be. Like, if we move outside of our own personal experiences and just look at what's already proven to be successful in our country, then real estate ownership is like integral. It's at the nucleus of any wealth building portfolio. And the wealthier the family, the more real estate you will see or business interests. So, and a lot of times, having real estate allows you to get into business interests because real estate's an asset. So you can borrow against it, use it as leverage, cross collateralize it to do other things. So it's very difficult for you to have a wealth conversation, a multi-generational wealth conversation, without there being real estate that gets passed on from generation to generation. And so, again, if you look at every example of every wealthy family, there's always been a lineage and a progression of real estate that's been passed down, whether it was businesses on that real estate or just real estate in general. So for anyone looking to truly build wealth long term and for it to pass on to their kids and grandkids, owning real estate, point one, you got to own it. Then you have to get into the proper ownership so that you can pass it down, whether that's a trust and some of these other legal entities that come into play with estate planning. So that at some point, none of us will live forever. So once you're no longer here, there are legal things you can do to ensure that your goals and objectives are still met. You could put something in a tree. You could put a property in a trust and say that it never gets sold, and now no one can ever sell it. And that, so there are some things that we got to do outside of just owning real estate. Real estate's great. Buy it, own it. That's cool. Get passive cash now. To move into generational concepts, you got to start applying some of the generational wealth building strategies that are associated with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the episode of MRSPinky Thoughts. I know you're a working man and you got other stuff to do. I don't want to hold you too long, but I thank you so much for joining us. We're going to put this inside of the Conscious Conservative because we're about solutions. And I just love how you just was giving so much information to so many people. So thank you so much again for joining me on my show, and you have a wonderful evening. I think we might have lost the reception. Let's see. Okay, I think we lost reception. He's on a guy on the move, so we're going to let him go for tonight. Thank you guys for joining us on an episode of MRSPinky Thoughts, and we'll see you next time.